Hi there, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to learn about use callback hook in React. Before we move towards use callback hook, we need to understand memoization in React. I'll explain it in a brief here, but if you want a detailed explanation of memoization in React, then please check my video. You will find the link in the description below. So without any delay, let's begin. Firstly, we know that rendering in React occurs when the prop or state of the component changes and it reflects the new updated data on the web page. But sometimes our React component goes through unnecessary rendering. So let's just look at the example here. As you can see that I have written some boilerplate code here, so I don't want to waste the time by writing this code again because the goal here is to explain use callback hook. So let us look at this code. So here we can see we have this app component and we have two state here. So the first one is have controlling the parent data, and then the second one is having the child data and set child data. That's all. And we have this method or the function called add parent data, so which is adding new parent data, right? So using this set parent data, and that's all. And we are logging parent component render here, and it is returning some JSX here. So in H2 we have parent component data, and so whatever the data is there inside this parent data state, so we are looping that out using map function and we are just rendering it on the web page. And we have a button called add parent data, and on the click of this button we are calling this add parent data function, which is adding this new parent data in this state called parent data. And again we loop this component, gets re-rendered, and we loop this and we re-render that in the on the web page. That's all. And it is calling one more component called child component, and it is taking one prop, that is child data. And what does this child data? So this child data is basically a array with single element called child data. That's all. So let us go to this child data component here, and you can see here we have received this child data and we are rendering this child component render. And again, just like the parent component, we have this heading and we are looping this child data using the map, and we are just reflecting that on the web page using paragraph tag. So that's all pretty much. Now let us go to the web page and see the output here. So let me refresh this here for a while. So let me refresh it. So now when I refresh, as you can see, we got two log statements. The first one is parent component render, and then the second one is child component render. So it means both the component got rendered when we load the page for the first time. That is, the parent component got rendered, that is app.js. So that's why it is logging parent component render. And then this child component also got rendered as well, and that's why it is logging this child component render. So yeah, basically that's it. So that's why we are getting this two log statement, and we all know that this is the JSX. So this part is coming from this parent component and this part is coming from the child component, right? So now let us try to add new data in this parent data. So let me click this add parent data button here, and you can see here, as soon as I click this, I'm adding new parent data here, right? And as soon as I add, we can see there is two log statement, the parent component render and then the child component render. Now again, if I click on this button, again new parent data gets added in inside this list here, and again we get this two log statement, the parent component render and the child component render. So here is a problem with re-rendering the component. So let me go to the VS Code and show you. So all the operation that I am doing, this add parent data operation and adding new parent data, basically this new parent data, all this operation is basically happening in this app.js component. So that's why if I click on this add parent data, new parent data gets re-rendered here. New parent data, I mean to say app.js component gets re-rendered, and then new parent data gets added here. But the problem here is we are logging this child component as well. So it's fine to log this parent component. By logging, I mean it's fine to re-render this parent component, because whenever I'm clicking this add parent data button, it is calling this add parent data function and it is calling this set state, and that's why it is re-rendering this app component. And that's fine because we need to display new updated data on the web page, right? So that's good. But here you can see that no matter how many times I click and add new data inside this, here the child component is completely same, but still the child component is getting rendered. So now this is a performance pitfall, because previously before I click anything, the child component was displaying the same thing. Now even if I click and add new data, the child component is displaying the same thing, because the prop and the state of child component haven't changed. I was passing the same prop, that is child data, earlier as well inside this child data component, and even after clicking the button I am passing the same prop. So the prop is not changing, neither the state of this child data is changing, but still this component is getting rendered, because we all know that this child component is called inside this app.js component, which is a parent component, and when a parent components get called, that all the child component gets re-rendered as well. But this is going to be a performance pitfall, because this parent component is updating something, and that's why it is good for it to re-render. But this child component is not updating anything, its props are completely same, its states are not updating, so this child component should not re-render. So by re-rendering this, we are consuming some computational resources, and it is going to become a performance pitfall. So somehow we need to stop this re-rendering of the child component. So we need to have some kind of a mechanism here by which we can know that whether the data of child component is changed or not. And if the data of child component is changed, then you render the child component, and if the data is not changing, then you should not re-render the child component. And yes, React offers a solution to this, and that solution is called memo, React memo. So let us implement this. Now, before I implement a memo here, you all might be thinking, hey Rajesh, I've clicked this video to learn about use callback hook, but what are you explaining this to me, memo and all those stuffs? So bear with me, I'm coming with the use callback hook. First, let us implement the memo here. So in order to implement the memo, I first need to import memo from React. So let me call this React here, and I just need to import this memo, that's all. And how do you implement memo? It's pretty simple. You just call this memo higher order function and you pass your child component here, that's all. Pretty much with just this one line of code, you have implemented React memo in your child component. So now you have memoized this child component. So by memoized, I mean whenever this app.js component is re-rendering, at that moment of time, what this memo is going to do is, it is going to check its prop. It is going to check its previous prop and its current prop, and it is going to compare the both. And if the prop is same as previous, then it is not going to re-render this child component. It is going to stop from re-rendering, and it is going to show the same previous data which was stored in the cache by this memo, and we do not need to go through re-rendering cycle of this child component, and we can save our computational resources. And now if the prop of this child data component gets changed, then obviously new data is updated, so we need to update the new data on the web page. For that reason, it is going to re-render. So this is how we can optimize the performance of our React component. So now let us go to the web page and see. So let me refresh this for one more time, and as you can see, when we load our page for the first time, the parent component and child component gets re-rendered. But now as soon as I add new data using add parent data, just notice carefully here, as soon as I click this button, it is adding new parent data, and we are logging parent component render, but you cannot find any log saying child component render. Why the child component is not re-rendering? It is because we all know that the previous prop of this child data was this child data, which was containing child data only, and that's why it is rendering child data 1 for us here. And as soon as I add this new data using add parent data button, as you can see, again the parent component got re-rendered, but the child component is not re-rendering, because this memo function here, it is comparing the previous prop of this child component to its current prop, and now when it compares, it gets the same prop and the prob is like here, this is the child data prob and it is containing the same data. It means the prob haven't changed, and if the prob is not changed and the state of the component is not changed, that means it is going to display the same result only. So why waste our computational resources by re-rendering this component again? And that's why this React memo doesn't allow this child component to re-render, and that's how we optimized our child component. But now there is a problem, and we are going to create that problem and we are going to see how use callback hook is going to solve that problem. So let's just say that you know that we have a function here, that we have a button here, add parent data button, and using this button we can add new parent data inside this parent component. But I want similar kind of button inside this child component as well, so that I can click to a button called add child data and it is going to add new child data inside the child component as well. So let us quickly implement this here. So let me go to this app.js, and here I'm just going to seamlessly copy the code here, and instead of calling this as add parent data, I'm just going to call it as add child data. That's all. And here, instead of this parent data, I'm going to spread out the child data, and here I'm going to say new child data. Now this method is going to add new child data, and here obviously instead of set parent I need to call set child data. Now this add child data method is going to add a new child data. That's all. Now we need to have a button here, so let us come to the child component. So I can again copy this button as well. Let me copy this quickly out here, and let me come here and let me paste this button. Now let me remove this on click add parent data, and instead of add parent data let me write add child data here. And another thing is that I need to pass this add child data, which is a function, as a prop to this child data component. So let me pass it here. So now I'm passing two prop, child data and add child data, and let me receive this prop here as well. Okay, I have received it. Now on click of the button I need to add this prop called add child data, which is a function basically. Now what is going to happen is, as soon as I call this add child data, this add child prop gets triggered, which is basically a add child data function, and it is going to set new child data. That means basically it is going to add new child data. So that's all, and now it should be working fine. Now let us go to the web page and let us check. So first let me refresh this, and now let me try to add a child data. Now it is adding new child data. It works completely fine, but here's a problem. Now let me address the problem here. As you can see, when I load the page for the first time, it is rendering our parent component and child component, which is completely fine. But now if I add new data inside this parent data, if I click this button and try to add new data, as you can see, it is not only rendering the parent component, but it is also rendering the child component as well. Now rendering the parent component is completely fine here, because I'm adding new data inside the parent component, so it should re-render. But why this child component is rendering? I'm not adding any new data inside the child component, and we solve this issue using this memo, right? We have used a memo, React memo inside this child component, and we basically memoized our child component, and earlier it was working completely fine. But why this React memo is not working now when we add this add child data function? So it is because of the fact that this add child data function or method is declared inside this app component. So basically whenever I click this add parent data button, it is adding new parent data and it is re-rendering this app component here. And when it is re-rendering the app component, it is recreating this add child data function again newly. So earlier it was already having this add child data function, and we were passing this add child data as a prop. But when I click on this button and I try to add new data inside this parent component, so this parent component gets re-rendered, and when this parent component gets re-rendered, all the functions declared inside this parent component gets recreated. And when this add child data, which is declared inside the parent component, app component, so it also gets recreated, it is assigned to a new memory location. It means the reference of this add child data got changed. And now our React memo thinks that this add child data, which is the same function as earlier, but now its reference is being changed when this app.js component got re-rendered, and now it thinks that it is completely different props, and that's why it allows us to re-render. But this add child data is the same function as previous, and there is no change in data. But when this app.component got re-rendered, this add child data got recreated and it got reassigned in the new memory location. So it address got changed, and when the address of this add child data function got changed, our memo also thinks that this is a completely new prop. Now we can fix this. So how to fix this? It's very much simple. We need to cache this function. So when we cache this function, what is going to happen is, even if this app.js component gets re-rendered, this gets stored somewhere in a fixed memory location, and that particular fixed memory location gets reassigned whenever this app.js component gets re-rendered. And basically our memo will say that, hey, it is the same add child data method that we were having earlier, so the props is not changing, so we do not need to re-render. And now we can fix this issue in that way. And in order to cache this, we have a hook called useCallback hook. Yeah, so that's where useCallback hooks comes in. So let me remove this part, let me remove this function, and let me write useCallback here. So before writing useCallback hook, you need to also import this useCallback from the React. Here my VS Code is auto importing for me, but if yours VS Code is not auto importing, make sure you auto import as well. So let me import this in a same line instead of writing multiple lines, and let me remove this line as well. Now this useCallback hook basically is expecting two parameters. The first is a callback function that I'm going to pass here. So it is expecting a callback function, and the other thing it is expecting is a dependency array. So it is expecting a dependency array. So by dependency array, I mean what are the factors or what are the values that is going to depend to this function. So I need to pass that data, or I need to pass that value to which this function is dependent on it, so that whenever that value or that data gets changed, it is going to recall this function. So now we all know that this function is dependent on this child data. So it is the dependency. So let me pass this dependency child data here in the dependency array. Now this use callback hook, what it is going to do is, it is going to cache this whole function. Just it is going to run for once, and it is going to cache it forever, and it is not going to run again. Now it is going to only run whenever this dependency, that is child data, gets changed. That means whenever we click on this button add child data, at that moment of time this child data gets changed, and only at that moment of time it is going to allow this add child data to run or execute again. So that's how we can use callback and improve the performance of our React component. So now let us go to the web page and again see. So let me refresh here, and as you can see, for the first time parent component and child component both are getting rendered. Now let me add new data inside the parent component. Now as you can see, here I have added new parent data, and you can see that parent component got re-rendered, but there is no child component that is getting rendered. Now again, if I'm going to add here, you can see I'm adding multiple time, and here at this time only the parent component is rendering, and there is no rendering happening inside the child component. It is because of use callback hook. So use callback hook basically helps you to memoize the function inside your React component. And using use callback hook, this is how we can improve the performance of our React component by avoiding unnecessary re-rendering. Now if you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. It motivates me to make more such video, and I'll come up again with new video.